Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the WFO Show, the only show that covers the world of open wheel racing at the speed you want it, wide open. I am your host, AJ Job. With me tonight, we have Billy Rowley and Tony Main, my sprint car extraordinaires, backing me up here. Of course, tonight is all about the Indycar series. The Grand Prix of St. Petersburg is coming this weekend. We're going to give you a preview of the first week of IndyCar action here in 2014. We're going to cover all the rest of the series as well, but no doubt, all of you IndyCar fans out there, you are going to get the information you desire to get you ready for 2014 this year. So let's go ahead and get straight into headlines, guys, and we'll go with the IndyCar series. First things first, IndyCar rule changes. We are now giving double points to all 500-mile races, Indianapolis, Pocono, California. These races are going to be worth twice as much as any other race on the series. And, you know, Tony, I'll start with you, man. We were talking about this. This harkens back to the days of AAA, back before USAC got involved in the 50s. And how do you feel about this? How do you feel about the Indianapolis 500 being worth more points than any other race?
Yeah, the fact that the more miles you put in the car, the more points it pays. It makes sense to me. You have to work harder for those 500 miles. Everything has to go smoother, and you get rewarded bigger. And it helps the oval guys. Yeah. Which we gotta love that. I gotta love that.
That's the big thing, and we're going to talk about that a little bit tonight to see, is this enough to help oval guys? Because this is a road course dominated series, Billy. I mean, we're talking about a series that awards 600 points on road courses, okay? 12 of the races are on road courses and street circuits, which, you know, there's 3 double headers on the season when they race Saturday and Sunday. But still, when you run 12 road course races and 6 oval races, there's a big gap there. So this double points that they're adding for these ovals, this makes a huge difference. This kind of evens that playing field out. But is it enough?
I think it could be. It'd be pretty neat to see somebody just win every single oval race and potentially, you know, be in a title hunt. But basically, maybe.
Right.
It was that way at the 500. I mean, Sam Hanks. There's guys that, you know, you win the 500 and they retire and then they hang out, and if somebody gets hurt, then they can win the points.
Sure. And I think I think that could be a really cool thing. Give some more incentive to those guys. I'm not a big proponent of the fabricating drama or fabricating anything, and you know, I'd hate to see somebody go out and win 5 road course races, win 1 oval race, and then lose the title to a guy that won another 3 oval races. You know, but at the same time, it makes sense to me. More wear and tear on the cars, a longer race, a longer grind. We all agree that 500 miles is a lot more difficult to run than 225.
Absolutely.
So I understand completely.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and I think that's what's most important. We've got to even this field out for the oval drivers because, quite frankly, the drivers that most people want to see in this series are American drivers who cut their teeth on ovals. And, you know, with a road course dominant series, you are going to attract the foreign competitor. That's where they cut their teeth. They have the experience in the formula type cars, and they just cannot compete most of the time. So that's a little bit of a rule change there to try and help the oval competitors and give them more to work with. Now, they also have changed some rules with engine changes and how we penalize drivers that make unapproved engine changes. Last year, they had a 10-spot grid penalty levied on any team that took effect in the next race if they had an unapproved engine change. Now that is completely gone. They've gotten rid of that. What they will do is they will take points away from the manufacturer, and they will actually if you have an unapproved change out, you'll get 10 driver and entrant points taken away instead of a 10-spot grid penalty. Fans kind of spoke out about that. They didn't like it, and this is kind of something that keeps that driver in his starting position because, you know, in qualifying he earned it. I mean, maybe we want to say, hey, you're supposed to make these engines last this long, but at least don't penalize the guy in that race. They're going to take a little bit of the points away, and you're not going to have any kind of issues there. What do you think about that, Billy?
I think more importantly, it should go back to the ways of old when you bought an engine and you took care of it yourself. And if it was your job to make it last 500 miles, then it was your job to make it last 500 miles. If you wanted to be the entire Menard crew and run 70 pounds of boost and blow a motor up in 30 laps, great.
Oldsmobile.
Yeah, the Oldsmobile and the Buick. If you want to do that, I feel like you should be allowed to. And I'm not a big fan of engine leases in that kind of racing. I think in some other forms it works out well, but you're at the pinnacle of American open wheel racing, and you can't even technically buy an engine. That does save some shop time. Have an engine guy.
Well, they still have engine guys through Ilmore Engineering.
Right, they do, but they're basically paid for by the IndyCar series at that point. They're not even allowed to put oil in these things. I mean, if they have to drain oil at the racetrack, they have to have a Honda representative there stating, here you go, you can do this. So, I mean, the days of old, it's, I'm not a big fan of the way that it's done now, but I'm glad that there's no more grid penalties because, like you said, the guy, if he sets on the pole, he deserves it.
Yeah. Well, that's something that the fans asked for. It's going to be interesting to see. Another interesting thing, talking about oval drivers and oval teams, J.R. Hildebrand lands a ride for the Indianapolis 500 with Ed Carpenter Racing. He's going to run a second car with Ed Carpenter there in the month of May. Tony, Ed Carpenter sat on the pole last year. This is a guy who's shown he can come within half a straightaway of winning this race. Is this a combination that needs to be feared in May?
I think so. Ed is definitely, he has the quickness, he has the potential for sure to be there. I mean, he won with Sarah Fisher, and now as this team ages and they get a little more mature with another driver and that more information that they're going to have from having another experienced driver at Indianapolis, I'm excited for it.
Billy, we know you have a lot of questions about J.R. Hildebrand. Didn't get it done in 2011.
That is the understatement of the century right there. I hope those side pods we talked about last week, I hope they have a few of them just in case there's a lap car anywhere, slower traffic,
but
or
there's
if
a lot
Danica's in the field or anything like that.
Other theories about, just smacking the wall in the last corner. But
yeah, well, hey, the guy did cross the finish line. Second place finish, not bad for a rookie. Okay, I
would still find the tallest building I could find, and there's nothing that would ever make me feel better about that. The only thing I would ever feel bad about or worse is if I was Scott Goodyear and legitimately lost the Indy 500 because I was stupid enough to pass the pace car.
Well,
we've all been racing since we were a wee little kids, and what's the first thing they tell you? Don't pass the pace car.
I had an experience of that at Gas City. I was starting probably in the fifth row at best, and I passed the pace truck, which it had its lights off when I passed it, and it flipped its lights on, and it became the pace truck. Transition from the push truck to the pace truck, and I had to start on the tail. Wasn't a huge deal, but it was a little confusing at the time.
Well, you definitely don't want to lose the Indianapolis 500 in the final 5/8 of a mile. Okay? You don't want to do that. Ask Marco Andretti how it feels to be beat off the final corner at Indianapolis.
He got beat because he was stupid. That was his only deal.
Well, who's stupider, the guy that hits the wall and crosses the finish line, or the guy that gets beat by Sam Hornish?
Around a lap car.
He lifted going into 3. Me and you both said he's screwed, and everybody else was like, no,
I don't know.
And Andretti's going to win.
I don't know.
No, there's no.
It was the mirrors. It was the
mirrors.
That's what it was. Well, enough about that. It's going to be interesting to see Hildebrand in that Ed Carpenter car. That is a good car, and he can't be with much of a better team in Indianapolis. That's for sure. It's going to be fast. Another thing we want to talk about, the new Indy Lights Dallara is now undergoing wind tunnel testing. This is a car, okay, of course we got this old Infiniti Dallara chassis from what I believe is 2002, which the Indy Lights have been using. And the problem is it's not a great car to use as a stepping stone to get into IndyCar. This is a car that has a flat bottom, no ground effects on this Dallara, so it doesn't simulate the kind of things that you want a driver to learn to be prepared for an IndyCar. Tony, we're trying to bridge that gap to give drivers a chance to get experience to get into the series. We talked about a guy like Brian Clausen, who did run Indy Lights, but none of that really prepared him all that well for the IndyCar series, even though he handled himself pretty well. Is this a good move to give drivers more experience that pertains to IndyCar to make that stepping stone and to get young American drivers into the series?
And that, what you just said, yes, it's good. The big issue is new cars are going to cost a lot more,
right,
and getting enough cars out there, and if they have a transition period, since that car's been, the Infinity's been around since 2002, there's a plethora of cars out there and parts that are available, and that brings the prices down and lets more teams jump in. But with a new car and the new expense, and the big money teams will go to the new car as soon as they can, because I'm sure it'll be a whole lot better.
Well, that's definitely why they kept that chassis, because everybody had one. There was no issue with smaller teams having to put more money into the series. But at this point, I think what they're concerned with is getting experience in the series that will help them get to IndyCar. That's the thing. We've got champions that should be getting chances in IndyCar, but
right,
people are saying, well, you're not really familiar with this type of car because the flat bottom car just does not give you the same sense of downforce and speed that you get in the IndyCar. Billy, I see this as a good move for the series. It's going to be expensive, but at the same time, we want our teams to step up and invest in the series. And right now, we've got to think about the drivers, right? Does this give young short track drivers, does this give Brian Clausen the chance to get the experience he needs to make a guy in the IndyCar series, a car owner, say, you know what? You handled yourself pretty well with that car. I'm going to give you a shot.
Unless it puts another $500,000 or $1 million in their pocket while they're driving it around, I don't see how. You've got car owners, the people that are going to be able to put a Brian Clausen or I'm going to use it just because he's the people's champion, a Dave Darland into an IndyCar, are not Chip Ganassi and the guys that are able to just say, hey, let's put this guy in a race car. I think they do need to work on the feeder program to get to that point, get them some more training. I firmly believe that the Infinity or the Indy Light series is broken. I mean, last year there was 6 cars at the first race.
Yeah,
it's the formula works. I think they just have to figure out a way to really bring that expense down in order for I think that would be the key to bring that expense down to where it's not like, the Racing with D.O. show, his dad and grandpa owned an Indy car that ran the Indianapolis 500. They were a family team that basically owned that car. I would love to see it grow into the point when a quote-unquote family team could afford to run an Indy Lights car, or at least have, with mild sponsorship, be able to race in the series, and then that way prove themselves and say, hey, we did this in the Indy Lights, at least get a chance to move on. I think that's a good stepping stone, and I think that's probably going to be an easier fix than trying to find money for a series that doesn't get a lot of publicity anyway.
Well, I think that, that's a pretty safe bet. And I think I hope that this encourages teams to get into the series, to know that the stepping stone isn't quite so large, to know that they have a chance to get those drivers to move on. And of course, if you have more drivers interested in that Indy Lights series, if they feel like they're going to get a chance in IndyCar, they're going to find the money. They're going to bring the money to the teams. It's going to build. So it's very important. And for me, you've got to give the drivers in the second tier the experience they need to get to the final tier. And right now, the Indy Lights series just does not do that. So we have to make changes. 500 horsepower turbocharged engines coming to this car, this setup. Obviously, they're trying to be cost-effective. Hopefully, they can do that. There's going to be a little added overhead for the teams, but this is going to happen in 2015, and I think it's a good move. So that's enough for IndyCar right now. Let's go ahead and move on to Formula One. Formula One news this week, every team, even McLaren and Mercedes, the ones that shined the most in Australia, well, at least without Lewis Hamilton there, They have all said that Australia wasn't a fair representation of what you can expect from their season and that they all will improve. Billy, I mean, this is, we're not going to talk too long on this, but it was just kind of funny to see all of this news come out, and Red Bull says, this isn't what we're going to be like all year. Williams says, this isn't what's going to happen to us all year. Mercedes, McLaren, we're going to get better. We're going to improve.
Have you ever rolled out of the box at the first night and gone, man, we ran 9th. That's all we got for the rest of the year. Have you ever gone, well, boys, let's load her back up in the trailer and just come back next year and hope for the best? That is the stupidest bunch of crap I've ever heard. If you are not pushing the envelope each and every week to get better, then what is the point?
It's a PR move. They looked silly. They looked ridiculous. They had a set down.
They looked like us.
A whole bunch of engineers got their asses handed to them.
Yeah.
And now they come out. Red Bull says, we've spent all this money, we're going to be better.
Right.
And they, glare over at the engineers and say, right?
Well, that's the thing. They've got board members and they've got sponsors that are saying, what the heck was that? We say, hold on now. This is going to be okay. It was just kind of something I thought was funny. We get a lot of great information from racer.com, and if you go to racer.com, click on the F1 link, it's literally like 3 pages worth of stories talking about how these teams are going to improve. If they all improve that much, they might be able to create a rocket ship that reaches the moon by the end of the year.
I think all they need to do is just keep putting more stickers on the side of the car, because a lot of engine builders and stuff anymore, hey, you put the sticker on the side of the car, that's at least 8 horsepower.
It's important. You're going
I cannot fathom that we even wasted a minute and a half talking about this. Who knew that a multi-billion-dollar team wouldn't get better after the first race? I mean, the junk at the back of the field even picks up a second over a year.
This was to be expected, but I thought that was a little funny. It definitely cheered me up for a day. One thing very important to us Americans, I know we got to keep our American Formula One listeners interested. Gene Haas, we talked about this Haas racing team trying to get into F1. He has now said that he has met all criteria to enter Formula One and is awaiting FIA approval. He seemed to think like this was something they needed to do quickly. He was hoping to see answers within the week, which we're closing in on that week that he was talking. He wants the chance to get this team together, to put the program together so he has time to prepare for next year. He's not sure if that's going to happen, but basically all he's waiting for is for the heads of F1 to FIA to sit down, say, okay, we want an extra team. But he believes they are concerned. They have 11 teams. Do we really need that 12th? Tony, I know us Americans are saying absolutely 100%. We need a 12th team. We want a team who he says is going to be based out of Kannapolis, North Carolina. You don't get much more American than that, and it's important for us American viewers.
Yeah, and have you ever heard of a series say, no, we don't know if we want you for sure yet or not?
Yeah, because
can you really perform at our... They need the...
you have to score a point in F1 to get any money.
Right.
So F1 would be stupid to say, no, well, we want you to give us a few $1 million to run at the back of the field for a couple years and us not pay you. Who really wants this to happen is Caterham, Marussia, so that they're not fighting for dead last on the grid anymore. But if Kurt Busch was in the car, pole at Melbourne 2016.
Oh my God! Let me just stop you right there. The thing is, the FIA, what Haas believes the FIA wants, he thinks that they actually want him to purchase one of the existing teams and to try and improve them. This guy's got plenty of money. He's got headquarters in Brussels. He's got headquarters in Shanghai. But Haas would prefer to start with his own team, to build that American team from the ground up. However, we have seen this sort of thing in the past. This Red Bull team that's won the last 4 Formula One World Championships was originally Jaguar. Okay? That was an underperforming team. The Red Bull come in, purchased it, upgraded it, and all of a sudden here they are. So Tony, what do you think? Is it better to start from the ground up American, or is it better to purchase a team and make it American?
Haas is a guy that is built himself. He will build his own team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything. He's done everything himself.
He definitely has the machinery and the equipment to do it as well. Pun intended. I think it would be awesome for him to do that. You take the engineering ability, and there's so many really good engineers in this country that it would be awesome if he got as many Americans as he could to work on this deal. And, I just think that would add a ton of I know I would watch almost every single race that I could just to see that's my country.
Right.
That's cool.
Just like every other team and country that is involved.
That's exactly
rally
right.
around their team.
Exactly right.
Well, see, this is the thing. We know that Haas has the most technologically advanced wind tunnel in America. He built it. It was an astronomical amount of money. He uses it for that NASCAR team. They do pretty well. They're doing all right.
Well,
but
they do it to put all the bodies on the Danica crashes.
They have the ability. Now we're just awaiting approval. Very soon we might have an American team that can compete in F1. Going to take a little time to get them there, but it's a very big possibility. So keep watch on that, and we'll let you know what happens in that. That's enough about Formula One. Let's go to the dirt with the World of Outlaws Sprint Car Series. This week in the World of Outlaws action, Kerry Madsen wins a thriller at Stockton Speedway. He only led one lap, but it was the most important one, okay?
It was $10,000 worth of a lap.
Right. Joey Saldana leads the most laps. He was in a battle with Schatz midway through the race. Schatz got by him, had that lucky red flag. Saldana stayed in the lead. Schatz took the lead with 2 laps to go, and Madsen came with him past Saldana and eventually beat him to the line. Kerry Madsen, I mean, what can you say? This is a guy that I really like, super nice guy, and is just, he kind of reminds me of Jack Hodenshield, the way he approaches the race. I mean, the guy goes out there, he runs as hard as he possibly can. He's there to win the race, and he's such a nice guy. I mean, this is a guy I hope we see more wins like this. But I mean, that's his kind of race right there.
Well,
beating a guy like Schatz, that's tough to do on the final lap. That guy's normally got things locked down.
Well, but again, California, that makes a big difference. Those tracks, that track there in Tulare is a lot like the Australian tracks that he started racing on. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't shock me that he won. I'm a big Kerry Madsen fan, actually. There was a video of him getting crashed in Australia, and the camera guy ran right over it, and before they even stuck a microphone in his face, you could hear him hollering through the car over engine noises and underneath of a helmet before they ever even got there at the guy. And I don't really know if there's any more passionate sprint car racer out there than Kerry Madsen, and he is a nice guy.
Yeah, that's definitely. I like Kerry Madsen. It was nice to see that race, an exciting race, and it bodes well for these guys as they come east, because they're coming, Tony. Only a couple weeks. We're going to see these guys out here. They're going to hit Eldora. They're going to hit these places. Us Midwest guys, we're getting ready. And the thing is, when we see the point standings right now, Paul McMahon and Donnie Schatz at the top. Donnie Schatz closed that gap to Paul McMahon. He's only 6 points behind Darren Pittman, Kerry Madsen breaking into the top 5, and Steve Kinzer. As these guys come east to the Midwest, Tony, who do you see reaching out and taking a stranglehold of the World of Outlaws points early in the season? Nobody.
You just named off how many guys. Any of them can reel off 3 wins.
Right.
Any of them, they can split 5 wins between all of them. Just like the last 3-4 years, the points are going to come down to the last 3 races of the season.
Right.
Well, last year it came down to a heat race. Yep. Darren Pittman saved the championship by getting around Schatz in the heat race to put himself into the dash and bury Schatz. The way that the format is, it's great you made the show, but you running third compared to second, that could be 5 to 10 rows worth of one pass. So I mean, he saved his championship with that one pass alone, and he didn't win a race since July.
Yeah.
So,
got to be there every night.
Absolutely.
Well, not only do those top 5 strike fear into the hearts of anybody with the wing on, 6 through 10, Brad Sweet, Joey Saldana, Tin Kading, Craig Kinzer, and Cody Dura. I mean, these are teams that are well-funded, they're well-backed, they got smart people and great drivers behind the wheel. We are looking at probably what could shape up to be the best World of Outlaws Sprint Car Championship we've seen in a long time. And it's going to be really interesting to see what happens when those guys get to the Midwest tracks and we see that diversity come to the front. But that's enough about the wing cars. Let's take the wing off and do a little talk about USAC. Now, this isn't breaking news, but the No Way Out 40 Jesse Hockett Memorial Race.
Which, let's make this clear, this is not a USAC show.
This is not a USAC show.
Way to go, Brownstown.
But Brownstown Speedway, we are kicking off Midwestern non-wing sprint car action this weekend with the Jesse Hockett Memorial. And Jesse Hockett Racing will be entering a car for Jerry Coons Jr. to pilot. Now, Billy, is this the first time Jesse Hockett Racing has entered the Memorial race since it began?
I think this one. They've ran the Hockett Memorial race out in Missouri, where he's from.
Okay.
And I believe, Follow the Corn 3 was actually based on that. Brady Bacon drove one car, and Casey Schumann actually made the field in a 305. And I think it's really, really neat. It's a good way to honor Jesse. He was the definition of WFO. He was a damn good reason to not miss hot laps. If they wrote a check to win hot laps, Jesse Hockett won every single one I've ever seen him enter. And I think it's cool. It's neat that it's coming back. I honestly expect a massive field of cars. There's a lot of people going that I didn't expect to go.
Everybody's ready to get racing. Now, the forecast looks horrible.
Yeah, not looking good.
I think we're supposed to get some flurries tonight. So, I mean, that
tires got grooves in them. Just go racing. It's fine.
It is going to be complicated, but I think this is a perfect schedule. I mean, it's the opening weekend for non-wing sprint car racing in Indiana. All the guys want to be there. All the guys want to get ready because you got the USAC opener at Lawrenceburg the week afterwards. But, I mean, it's great to see this Jesse Hockett Memorial. It's very important. You talked about the type of racer Jesse Hockett was. I mean, this was a guy that you either loved or hated because that pedal was on the floor all the time. He was not afraid to put a slide job on, and he was not afraid to take that slide job to contact measures. That was the type of guy that he was. But Tony, when you talk about drivers like that, you talk about Dave Darlin in his early days. You talk about Jack Hewitt. Those guys that win it or wear it, these are the sprint car drivers that really epitomize the sport.
Yep, everybody has to start off aggressive. You find the line, you go over it a handful of times, and then as you learn, you can pick and choose and make better decisions.
Yeah, but it's definitely good to see that No Way Out 40 this weekend. Going to be interesting. Hopefully we get it in. Brownstown, that's an excellent racetrack. They really should run sprint cars down there more often. I know the dirt late model stuff really is king down in that part of Indiana, but I mean, I think you know how we feel about cars with fenders. We can always just take those fenders off and race them. That would be no problem. But that's enough for headlines. Let's go ahead and move on. We're going to give you the question of the day that we're going to explore in the next segment for our WFO discussion. And today's question of the day, please, everybody watching on YouTube right now, go ahead and give us your thoughts on this question. Tell us what you think. We're going to give you our thoughts in the next segment, and we want to include you as well. So, the question of the day, does the change in IndyCar points help bring a balance between oval tracks and road courses in the series? And will it prompt teams to give oval specialist drivers a shot in their cars? The main thing, we've talked about this in F1, do the American fans have anybody to really grab onto in the IndyCar series? The guys that we looked for back in the day that ran on those short tracks that we really connect with and understand deeply. That's what it's all about. Does this give the chance to bring those guys back to the forefront? Whereas right now it's dominated by road course guys who come from overseas. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I want your opinion. Do you think this is enough to really get your interest in the series? Can this points change help? So we're going to take a break, and when we get back, we're going to preview the 2014 IndyCar season and discuss the question of the day. You are listening to the WFO Show. We will be right back. Welcome back to the WFO show. AJ back with you once again with Billy and Tony to talk open wheel racing with all the excitement of the events themselves and none of the BS. Remember, if you are watching live via YouTube, you can get in on the discussion.
You just got to see, I got to cut in, you just got to see AJ do a hair flip because he's all jailed up.
I'm trying to.
He looks like David Beckham, does he not?
I will take that 100%, no problem.
More, it's,
Okay,
that's why I wore a hat.
Back to the actual.
Well, see, if you're listening to the show, that's great. We want you to listen to the show. But if you are not watching live, you are missing all of this. We are in HD this week. We've been working on it, have some issues, getting this thing going. We have a new program that has great production quality. We're going to be able to add in logos. We're going to have a lower third down there with nice sprint car pictures from Mr. Murray. We're going to have all kinds of fancy stuff that we couldn't figure out yet. But once we figure it out, it's probably going to be in here next week. So definitely tune into the live show next week. Get in on the discussion.
And see this flock of seagulls hair.
Oh, it's gonna be wonderful.
Live and in the flesh.
If I really do look like David Beckham, what the heck are you doing? You need to be watching, okay? But we do want you to get in on the discussion anytime by commenting in the show feed or by sending us an email at wfoshow@live.com. We can also be found on facebook.com/WFOshow and on Twitter @WFOshow. Like us, follow us, and join in on the fun. Well, we know the IndyCar Series season starts this week. We're going to the Grand Prix of St. Petersburg, the house that Dan Weldon built, some would say. And I think where we need to start with this season, because this is going to be an IndyCar season unlike any other. And it starts as soon as you look at the IndyCar Series schedule. Let me just count this off for you. March, April, May, June, July, August. 7 months, people, and one of those months is just March 30th. That's it. We get 7 months of IndyCar action, back to back to back to back. They're going to line them up, and they're going to stop. August 30th, the IndyCar season will be over. This is something we've never done before. Normally, throughout the IndyCar season, we'll drag it out through September into October. We'll have 2 to 3 weeks in between every race. People lose interest. They don't know what's going on. This year, they said, we're going to compact this schedule. Even though we're not going to have as big of a footprint, you're not going to be able to see IndyCar as long throughout the season. You will see it compacted. There will be action almost every week. Billy, what do you think about this? Is this something where you're concerned about losing extra time, where you don't have IndyCar racing in September, or is this something that you think is a good thing because you're going to have races almost every weekend?
I think it's great. You're going to have races every weekend almost. Open wheel people by nature are, in my humble opinion, a little bit more hating of downtime. So I mean, it's not a way to rush through a season. It's just, I think it's a brilliant idea to get people interested. If you have a great race, let's say the race at St. Pete is fantastic and everybody loves it. Then they have a month off before they go to another one.
Right.
Everybody forgot how great that race was. I remember, when it was all ovals. Michigan, then it was Michigan, you had then Kentucky, and then California, all in a row.
Right.
And it was action every single time, and then you were like, man, I can't wait till Texas. And then there was a week build-up for Texas. That's how this is. And now, granted, there's a lot of little S's on it instead of, the little oval mark. But I'm okay with that, at least as of right now, just because it's all bundled together. It's going to be great for the series. I think it's going to promote sponsors. I really think that this is more of a sponsorship ploy than anything, because it's going to bring more people into it at a faster rate. When everybody's, and let's be honest, after August, nobody cares about the IndyCar series anymore, at least on TV, because there's that stupid thing NASCAR does called The Chase.
Well,
So then everything on Fox Sports and everything else that goes on, they all care about that, and nobody seems to care about the IndyCar series.
I understand The Chase. Go ahead, Tony.
I'm hoping that this brings with it next year there's some September races, and it stays truncated, but it just grows.
Right.
It leaves it open for
add
growth.
more races. And that's the thing. It does leave room for growth. Even if you put a race in the middle there, if for some reason, you get Milwaukee back, you can fit them in and things like that. Billy, you talked about the chase late in the year. Here's the thing I want you to remember. And this is something, I've been in soccer for years, okay? And there is nothing more paranoid than an American soccer fan. They're always looking like, how can we get more interest in what we're doing? How do we get more time? All of this stuff. This is something that they think about. And I'm telling you, when the IndyCar Series sat down and made this schedule, they start looking at what happens late in the year. You said that I'm going to tell you what it really is, the NFL. I wasn't
even thinking about that. Good call.
You get late into the season, okay, when you get to September, October, November, they start playing NFL football. Even if it's preseason, you get no viewers. They suck everybody away.
What are you talking about?
It's a little game they play. It's got this ball. It's kind of round, made of pigskin. I know you know what pigskin is.
I know what pigs are. I have nothing for it. No interest.
But that's the thing. And Tony, do you feel like this is something that allows the series to gain momentum? Maybe they don't have as many months to do it, but you allow yourself to gain excitement in the series. You make sponsors happy, and you create a product through 7 months that is exciting, and you really nail that 7 months that you have.
Like you said, you can have a strong presence every week. There's something going on. You can get press out there every week. It stays rolling, and hopefully it keeps building.
Yep.
Now, on the flip side, it's going to be really tough for teams because IndyCar is traditionally, in the last 10 years, they've had long off seasons. Off team, the crew separates. They come back together. You have a team that goes the whole season. They're going to have more help because everything is condensed.
Yeah, that is actually pretty interesting. That is off season going from September to March. It'd be interesting to see how they keep people in work and doing that. That is something I didn't even think about. Another change for this year. Now, this is something that's kind of interesting. The IndyCar Series has mandated dual turbochargers this year. They've done that to avoid big power differentials between manufacturers. Now, Chevy, when they initially made their engine, they made it a dual turbocharged engine because it was not illegal. Okay, this gave them immense power on ovals, and they had a big advantage over Honda. Honda, who had a single turbocharged system, has now upgraded to the dual turbochargers because IndyCar says, look, you guys can do what you want, but we're going to make sure when you do what you want, you're going to continue to stay pretty close. We don't need any kind of a difference because there for a while last year, Billy, it looked like Scott Dixon and Target Chip Ganassi didn't have a shot at anything because they were running that Honda power plant, and it was just at the middle of the season when we got to a lot of the road courses that Dixon started coming on, and all of a sudden he's a champion in an underpowered engine.
I'm going to step right in there. I like to differentiate. I like to see different stuff where, the Honda last year didn't have the power, but it had the fuel economy, and that played huge in a couple of places where the Chevy guys got to think a little more on their fuel strategy. So I like seeing the differences when everything is the same. Yeah.
Well, and then just have one engine. It goes. I understand. I love the fact that there's multiple engines, but this isn't what. I don't think this is what the vision was when Randy Bernard came out and said, "This is what we're doing. There's going to be we're going to have one car, but yet you can do almost whatever you want with it, side pod, and then it's 3 engines." Well, Lotus screwed the pooch, and they had nothing anything.
Right.
And Chevy didn't do anything wrong or illegal, but then Honda throws a fit because, well, we didn't put 2 turbos on it. What fault is that? That's yours.
Right.
And I guess I'm all for equality, and I want the series to be good, but I don't want it to be fabricated. That's what this seems like. Well, hey, because the thing that's going to really it's really going to suck is when they do get to Indianapolis, and this really becomes a factor. One team or one manufacturer is going to be 3 miles an hour faster. well, we're going to have to slow you guys down.
Well,
No. I did my homework to be this fast. You guys make your cars fast.
Well, I think the series has a history of letting things go at Indianapolis, but I don't think you can be too hard on the series because they went out there and they tried to do it. They tried to give open rules to where these guys could create their own power plants and make this work. But then when they seen that there was a little bit of inequality, well, not even really a little bit, there was a pretty big gap, at least on the ovals. When they saw that, they said, okay, now let's bring those rules in there. It's one thing to go with strict rules right off the bat and try to create this spec series. It's another thing to try and do something to open it up and then kind of scale it back. And that's what I see IndyCar doing right now. I really don't have a problem with that. And as long as Chevy and Honda are happy with it, we're hearing reports that Cosworth is talking about getting back into the series. You know,
Awesome.
Great.
Rumors
of possibly Ford
Great.
hopping in. They are actively looking for a manufacturer to say, hey, put a badge on this engine, we're ready to rock. So maybe we'll see 3 engines in the series soon. They're talking about possibly having a prototype to reveal at Indianapolis. And then 2015, we got 3 engines vying for that IndyCar championship. Would be great stuff, for sure. Now, let's move on from all the differences, well, at least the differences in rules and scheduling-wise. Let's look at the changes that we've seen with driver-team combination. This is the big change in IndyCar Series this year. There's a lot of big names moving around, some guys that are missing from this list, and we've even got some rookies this year, too. 4 rookies in the series. How about AJ Foyt Enterprises and Martin Plowman? Carlos Munoz, the rookie that finished second last year for Andretti Autosport, is going to have a full-time ride this year in the number 34 car. Jack Hawksworth, Brian Herta Autosport is the team there. He's going to be racing for that Brit. Then you also have Mikhail Aleshin, who's going to be running for Schmidt Peterson Motorsports as a teammate to Simon. I mean, you correct me if I'm wrong. It's been a while since we've seen a really class like that. I mean, we've had rookies trickle in, but to have 4 all at once, guys coming in with significant reputations, especially a guy like Carlos Munoz, and all of them have good equipment.
Yeah, and that's a good thing for the sport. I think the only downside is there's not one of them that's ever ran a sprint car at Kokomo, but we're not going to beat that horse to death. You know, well, true. You know, I think it's a good fit for the series. It's a very nice thing. It's refreshing to see, like AJ Foyt Racing bringing. You know, it's nice to see, and it's showing that it's slowly starting to come back. The new formula may be working. I wish they'd get more to the ovals again, because I think that's where the series is really going to shine again. But I think as a driver standpoint, all these guys, they're road course guys. That's where they came from, and that's what it's progressing into being.
Maybe the points can shake that up where teams have to, because, you know, going back to the points deal, you know, technically there is one oval specialist now.
Right.
Ed Carpenter.
Yeah.
That's true, and that's another thing for this year. Ed Carpenter's going to be running the ovals in that 20 car, and Mike Conway is going to step in and do the road courses for him as well. So that's something
but good
that
for Mike Conway.
Right. Yes,
Very
it is
good
good
for
that he's got a ride now.
Don't. Yeah. I mean, he almost killed himself at Indy. I mean, give him a.
I just.
Hey,
he's won races. Obviously, he's
Yeah,
a good
well-
pilot on the street courses, but I just know.
Hey,
go have some gusto.
if you don't have the gusto to run at the ovals, then run the road courses.
Well, you got to do something. He's helping Ed Carpenter out, that's for sure. Now, some more big changes that we have. Ryan Briscoe, another full-time ride now. He's back with Chip Ganassi. The last time we saw Ryan Briscoe in a Chip Ganassi car, Chicagoland Speedway, the results were not good.
Almost Mike Conway-esque.
Quite fireballish, I think would be the word we'd say. Or Servia, gaining a ride with Ray Hall and Lanigan, who had a transporter fire this morning. That was kind of unfortunate to see. No equipment harm. They're still going to get everything to St. Petersburg with no issues. But, Tony, these are the guys we want to talk about. 2 big changes. No big deal. It's only the defending Indianapolis 500 champion Tony Kanaan replacing Dario Franchitti at Target Chip Ganassi Racing. And then just a small matter of this Colombian who He won a couple of kart championships. He come over, run one Indianapolis 500, dominated, and then said, "See ya, I'm going to Formula 1," and then won the Grand Prix of Monaco.
And then went
Pablo
to
Montoya.
NASCAR.
We're leaving out. And then Juan Pablo Montoya, the fantastic guy with Chelsea in the kart days. Team Penske taking over that number 2 ride, teammates with Helio Castroneves and Will Power. I want to ask you, Tony, how big is it to have Juan Pablo Montoya back in the series? And out of these two guys, Tony Kanaan and Juan Pablo, who do you think has the best shot this year?
Juan is a smart, aggressive driver, and he's done so much. Just like you said, he's been in so many situations that experience of being everywhere is invaluable in a race car. And with Tony Kanaan, I mean, that is such a team, such a lineup to have that much experience going into a season and going into Indianapolis. I mean, you could sweep the front row very easily. Very easily.
Well, and I'm thrilled for Tony Kanaan because let's call it what it is. This is his best opportunity he's probably ever had.
Absolutely.
I mean, the Andretti car that he won the title in, phenomenal deal. He never went down a lap. He finished every single lap that year. But by far the best opportunity he's ever had, and I really hope he does well in it. And fan favorite, I don't know of anybody that roots against him. There's I like to stick to the Americans and things like that, but he's almost like he's an American just because he's such a good guy, and I'm happy for him. I'm glad he's going to be right up there with the rest of them.
I think it's going to be very interesting. It's hard to argue against Tony Kanaan. Being the defending Indy 500 champion, this is a guy we know he has the goods in the IndyCar series. He's never left. He has the experience. He's going to the best team he's ever been with. But Juan Pablo Montoya coming back and teaming up with Team Penske, the guy slimmed up a little bit.
That's scary.
He's lost some weight. That guy, he has the talent. And I just think back to 2000, and you're like, who in the world is this guy? Chip Ganassi back at Indy for the first time in many years, and he waxed the entire field. Nobody had anything for him. And, everybody has their days. But I think Juan Pablo Montoya with Penske is going to be a big thing. In preseason testing, Montoya has been very quick, okay? In one of the recent tests at Skip Barber, he was second. This guy has not even strapped on the red Firestone tires. He's still got a little bit of learning curve to master. But you're talking about a guy that can get great speed out of any car. When you have those fast fours on there, he's not going to have any issues. So that's going to be something to look for. And let us know, people on YouTube, who do you give the edge to? Tony Kanaan, Juan Pablo Montoya? Who's going to be the guy that you really expect to do the best this season with what he's got?
And I know Tony Kanaan is currently setting a record, or at St. Pete, he will set the record for the consecutive starts, 200 and some odd races. I don't have that number in front of me, but that's a pretty amazing feat in this day and age. That's a Dave Darlin-ish style, 1,000 starts.
I like the People's Chant insert there. I enjoyed that.
Okay, so now let's get to the question of the day.
Well, before that, me and Tony wanted to talk really, really fast about something that's very, very important to me and Tony. And I know it is
near and dear to our heart.
Okay.
In IndyCar news, Jim Nabors announced that this will be his last year singing Back Home Again in Indiana. Me and AJ will not reenact the song if you don't know it. YouTube is fantastic.
Back home?
But me and Tony actually on the way up here talked about this. Was one thing that we just and honestly, maybe this should be the question for next week. What should the Indianapolis Motor Speedway do? You can't just, part of me says play a tape and preserve the history for forever, but then you can't replace that. I mean,
40-some years of millions of people hearing him sing, getting goosebumps, getting teary-eyed. It's going to be a mess.
Yeah.
The start of the 500.
The only thing, and this is the last thing I'm going to say, the only thing that should ever be replaced in the opening ceremonies of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
I know where you're going.
Florence Henderson. Just that woman. There is nobody in that crowd. If you've never been to Indy before, it literally makes you twitch. It's so bad.
You cringe and laugh.
I agree. I have no problem. This is something. I know everybody's get the outpouring of support, and I'm really going to miss Jim Neighbors. I think this was something that at least I and some people have come to expect. We knew his health was getting a little poor.
Right.
We've seen many years.
Just get there.
We've seen many years recently where he's not even been able to show up, and they've played the taping. I think it's fine. Keep that tape. You don't give that to anybody else. Let it go. People are used to it anyway. They want to hear that voice. Take the best one that you've got out on tape. Play it every year. No problem.
Next week's discussion, it's got to be, because there's got to be hundreds of opinions on.
There was more people that cared about Jim Neighbors not singing anymore than there was about people caring about Verizon coming on board.
Well, it's a possibility.
But anyway, I digress.
That's what we need to talk about. The people caring. That was part of the question of the day. Balance between ovals and road courses. As American fans, the historic IndyCar fans, they rely on those oval drivers. They relate to those oval drivers. And we've talked about it. The short track fans that go and watch the USAC races, that go and watch the World of Outlaws, when they hear about the Verizon announcement, they hear about all this IndyCar stuff, they don't care. If it's not the Indianapolis 500, they don't even tune in anymore because they feel like they don't have drivers to relate to. They feel like the series does not speak to them. And to a certain extent, I understand that. I love Elio Castroneves, okay? I love him. I love him to death. I love Tony Kanaan. But where I come from in racing, the way I grew up, even though I grew up with IndyCar, it's hard for me to relate to those guys because they grew up in Brazil, running karts, running road courses. They come over here, that's what they knew, and they learned the ovals. Now, but you look at historic drivers, Foyt, Unser, Andretti, all of these guys come up on the dirt tracks, made it to the IndyCar series, and those were the most popular drivers because A, they're American, and B, the everyday man could relate to them, and we knew them because we saw their entire career progression. This change in the oval rules, will we see the oval drivers get more chances? Is there enough star power in the IndyCar series to make these people interested? Because quite honestly, I think we need them. Billy, what do we do?
$1 million question. I don't have the answer to that. I don't think that it's going to. Nobody. It's not like F1 where maybe if they paid on owners' points instead of driver points, maybe if the owners' championship was more of an important piece. Maybe Chip Ganassi would say, okay, you're going to run this track. You're going to run the street courses. You're really good there. You're going to run the road courses. You're really good there. And then I want that guy over there, from Winchester to run the ovals. I don't ever see that happening. I think it would be neat. Kevin on YouTube said something. He said there's, you might need to even go more than double points to attract some of the oval ringers. He made a dig that there's still a lot of points to be earned from turning both ways, which is very true. He even went to the extent of saying double points might even make Danica somewhat competitive.
Oh my gosh!
Which he's obviously kidding because he knows my dear love for that woman. But it really. I don't see how it's going to hurt anything, but I don't really necessarily see how it's going to help. I would love to see, I would personally love to see more teams like Ed Carpenter's pop up that say, we're not running the road courses. We are just going to go run the ovals. We are going to concentrate on that. We are going to be fat, like a Ron Hemmelgarn or something. I would love to see that. Become an oval team. That's all you do. Menard, run the Indy 500, run, Michigan, run the ovals, and be done.
I'm in the same way. Maybe if that gives teams an idea that if we run really good at these 6 races, these 8 races, hopefully it becomes like 10 or 12 oval races.
Right.
And then they can say, hey, we can finish in the points. We can still finish in money in the points. So we don't have to mess with the road courses.
But by the same token, the less ovals that are on the series now, let's not kid ourselves. Whose fault is that? That's our fault. And that is our fault because Kentucky is not on the schedule anymore. Everybody should have supported that race. That race has always been good.
Amazing racing.
Amazing track to watch a race at.
Absolutely. There's a lot of ovals that aren't on this series anymore, but then again, there's a lot of ovals that aren't open anymore. I firmly believe that the IndyCar series should go to Gateway. Take them back.
Gateway? Is that even still standing?
Absolutely. They ran a Silver Crown race there last year. It had 7 cars at it, but
really?
my God, they had a Silver Crown race.
I think a lot of the problem with the tracks that we saw cut from the series, NASCAR-owned tracks. Okay, they're owned by that conglomeration, and it just seems like the IndyCar series wants to build their own identity without those tracks. Now, there are 3 races on the schedule that do not get double points, the ovals. Texas Motor Speedway, Iowa Speedway, and the Milwaukee Mile, which I was not aware was on the schedule, but it's worked in August, not in the traditional June type race. It's going to be run in August. So there's 3 races right there. Is this something where maybe we need to give double points there as well? Or are we standing firm on the double points for the big 3, and then next year we're hoping that we're going to add more ovals in?
Maybe not double points, but more points for all the ovals. But I still like the 500-mile races. They're the grinds.
Right.
Those are where you have to have your stuff together.
Where you have to make your money. That's the big deal.
Billy, give me one driver the best driver that an American short track racer and short track fan can get behind that would bring excitement and attention to the IndyCar series. One driver.
That's currently not there?
Currently not in the IndyCar series.
Ooh.
You can pick them from anywhere.
Man.
On the spot.
I was not prepared for this.
You better get prepared.
Everybody's probably going to go Kyle Larson. I'm not going to go there because he's already gone NASCAR land. He's going to be a sprint car guy forever. Rico Abreu.
Okay.
You want a guy that can drive a race car and has marketing ability. My dad didn't know who he was. Dad watched the Chili Bowl a couple years ago. He got in, he won the B main. They went and interviewed him, and he hopped out of the car, and Dave Argerbright knelt down next to him, and my dad just went, "For real?" I didn't like Danica being there because that was a marketing ploy. That's not a marketing ploy either. Rico has talent. I would love to see Rico do that. He would be one that I would love to see. Personally, Dave Darlin, just because everybody loves Dave Darlin. But I'm a believer in Rico.
That guy does amazing things for me. Tony, same question. One driver. Who's going to bring the people to the IndyCar series?
There's so many to choose from, and there's a lot of guys. There's guys that are hot, like Rico. Chris Bell is another one that is hot and talked about right now, what they're doing next and who they're running for. But you have the guys that could bring the most fans in would be any of them on your rundown of World Outlaw points. You pick a guy out of the top 10 of that has the best marketability, and he's going to be able to bring the most fans to IndyCar, because they are truly a national series that has a following across the whole country, and they have wing experience. It's a little different style of wing experience, but
I'll give you that.
I think any of those guys could bring in the most people.
I can't believe you guys. I really can't believe you. I shot that question out there, and you just threw it on the ground and stomped on it. I'll give you 2 since you guys both failed me. Kyle Larson.
I said Kyle Larson, but he's in NASCAR.
You said you're going to leave it.
I am going to leave it.
Kyle Larson, Brian Clausen. You put those 2 guys behind the wheel of an IndyCar full time. People get interested. If Kyle Larson can get me interested in NASCAR, he can dang sure keep my interest in IndyCar. And Brian Clausen, I'm a believer. I think the guy can drive anything you put him in, and he deserves a shot.
And John Stanbro. There's another one. His mustache needs to be at the speedway.
The only shot that any front engine specialist has, and we'll call all sprint car guys front engine specialists.
I like that. It makes it sound way more sophisticated than it actually
than a dirt sprint car
Right.
driver. They have to have the support with a team to do the testing, to get time in a light series, to really get invested in. Clausen didn't have that investment. The USAC money fell apart. One shot in Indianapolis is not enough. You have to have a lot of time in a car to make that transition. Harkening back to the 57 champion of Jimmy Bryant, and then also talking about Hurtubise. Hurtubise was well known for, after he's got burnt, he couldn't hop in a rear engine car because you felt everything through your hands. So he built the Mallard and ran in Indianapolis, somewhat of a sideshow, somewhat of an oddity, but because it was all butt feel. The rear engine cars were all in the hands. Everything in the front engine is in a butt feel. So, getting a guy to go from butt feel to feeling it in his hands, it's going to take a lot of seat time and a lot of investment.
And hopefully the Indy Lights cars, the new Indy Lights cars, will give him that chance. It gives a young American driver who's used to something else a chance to get seat time without needing as much money. So that's going to be very important. But that's all the time we got for the WFO discussion this week. We're going to take our final break, and when we get back, we're going to go over your thoughts and the big races you have to look forward to this weekend. You are listening to the WFO Show. We are back with the WFO Show. For those of you watching on YouTube and participating in the discussion, We thank you for getting involved, and we want to let everyone know that the show is also available on iTunes and Stitcher Radio to listen to at your leisure on your mobile devices. Picked up an iPhone myself this week. Let me tell you, life is easier with Apple products, no doubt about it. But this is where you'll get the music. The live show doesn't have the music yet. We're still working with this production equipment. But you can see us in HD next week. I'm sure we'll have more bells and whistles to add on as this show continues to improve. We've got partners in the works. We should see our first sponsorship come through in April. You'll hear about it in May, doing various things. If you want to advertise on this show, we've got partners coming in. Please contact us. Send us an email, wfoshow@live.com. You can talk to us on Twitter or Facebook. We'll get you on here. This show continues to grow, and we'll definitely promote your product and have a little fun while we're doing it. But iTunes Stitcher listeners, I want to let you know, please be sure to subscribe to the podcast to have the show automatically download to your computer each week, and leave us ratings and reviews to help the show grow and improve every episode. Last week, we actually were featured iTunes as a new and noteworthy show. So we were on their front page. They said these guys are as good as Dan Patrick, and that says enough right there. So we're trying to spread the Open Wheel word, and you can help us do that. So please be sure to do that. We got some feedback on the YouTube talking about the compacted schedule. Kevin Springsteen says guys like Jordan Johncock might have an issue with a compact schedule with a lot of races. When he was a kid, he made the occasional stop at the gas station that Kevin worked at. More than once, he was pulling a trailer full of carnage from Indy or Milwaukee. And I do not doubt that a compacted schedule will make things tough on the teams, but that's why they get paid. That's why they got $17 million sponsorships to take care and have extra cars waiting for them when they get the transporters back home. But right now it's time for the weekly racing outlook, where we let you know who is racing and where, so you don't miss a single minute of the open wheel action you desire. This week, Formula One is in Malaysia, the second race of the season. Race starts Sunday morning at 1 a.m. Eastern Time on the NBC Sports Network. Malaysia is an awesome racetrack, one that Ferrari normally does fairly well at. We'll see how these things turn around. We talked about every Formula One team saying we're going to be better. Well, not all of them are going to be better. We're going to see how that shakes out at Malaysia this weekend. Also in action, the World of Outlaws are heading to Merced Speedway Friday night before making a stop in Chico, California for the Mini Gold Cup at Silver Dollar Speedway on Saturday. I know you guys agree with me. Silver Dollar, one of the favorite stops, always provides great action out there in California. Mini Gold Cup this weekend on Saturday night. However, the one we're most interested in this week, Midwest Sprint Car Racing, starts up this Saturday with the No Way Out 40 Jesse Hockett Memorial at Brownstown Speedway. Jack Slash and Mav TV will be recording to cover the race on tape delay. One thing we just got word of 19 minutes ago on Twitter, Josh Burton Racing will be making an appearance at the No Way Out 40, and I believe it's Jeff Bland driving that car.
Which, if you don't know the story, last year Josh Burton was killed at the Bloomington Speedway. One of those freak accidents that, just one of those things that unfortunately happens in this sport. And as much as it, hurts to think about it, it's great that, some people may disagree, but it is great, I think, that the family is still probably medicating a little bit by racing.
Yep.
And Tony's the same way, AJ's the same way. Racers medicate by racing. It's what they do. It's just how it is. And glad to see that family still running. Glad to see Jeff Bland in the car. He's definitely gonna give that car a run for his money. And
hopefully the weather holds out.
Yeah, hopefully the weather holds out so we can be there. So the orange painted Hoosiers will be there in full force, which is good to see.
Yeah, forecast this week says for snow on Thursday. We're supposed to have rain Friday and Saturday before sunny and 66 on Sunday, which would be too late. But we will be interested to see that. And like you said, Josh Burton Racing, racing is a family sport. We talked about the dangers last week. And you don't get that. You don't just get the love for racing. You just don't wake up one day and say, hey, I want to go racing. You get that from your family. The family goes to the racetrack. The kids get involved, and it's hard to just drop it all at once. But this sport, and last year we seen it all too much. This sport can be very deadly and very upsetting very quickly. Multiple times last year in sprint accidents like that. But that's the No Way Out 40 at Brownstown. The race of the week, however, no doubt about it, the Verizon Indycar Series opens their season by going to Florida for the Grand Prix of St. Petersburg, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ABC, the main one. So IndyCar Series is going to be out there on regular network television for everybody to take in. Let's put you on the spot, Billy. Who's going to win this race?
Juan Montoya.
Juan Pablo Montoya.
And the awesome thing is he's not going to care. He's going to win the race and then be like, I should. And that's why I like him.
And then hopefully somebody comes out of the crowd and just...
Hey.
What do you think?
A jet dryer. He can survive anything.
I'll go way off in left field. Had good runs last year and won. Simon Pagino.
Okay.
I like that.
That's a good call. That's a good shout right there. I think I'm going to stay pretty status quo, and I'm going to go with Helio Castroneves. He's got a history of winning races down there in St. Petersburg. I think Spider-Man has a chance to climb the fence once again this weekend. But Montoya and Will Power will be right there. There's no doubt about it. Those guys, that Team Penske team, is going to be hard to beat for sure. Interesting to see the difference between the Chevy and the Hondas this year. It's going to be really, really neat to see how that shakes out. Excuse me. But that's the checkered flag for this show. We will be back next week with all the news you care about from the world of racing. Until then, feel free to get involved in the discussion with us online. We are always ready to bench race with you. For Billy Rowley and Tony Main, this is AJ Job saying enjoy your racing at a comfortable speed this week so you can come back here and talk about it with us. WFO. Catch you next time.